Now available in paperback and e-readers, Isis, Samurai Goddess. The goddess next door takes on kung fu killers in this action-packed martial arts Isis series adventure. Get Isis, Samurai Goddess in paperback and e-readers today. In the comic book industry, many fans, casual readers, editors, publishers, and even some artists don't see a value to the role of the writer. And in the comic book industry, many people won't consider hiring a writer unless an artist is attached to that person. And a lot of people don't understand how important a good writer is to a comic book and how essential a writer is to a comic book. A lot of people undervalue the role of the writer, but the role of the writer is essential in creating a well crafted comic book because when you have a good writer, they are going to create and craft a great story. Now, a lot of people believe that comic books are a visual medium because they see the pictures on the covers and they see the pictures in the panels, but comic books are books. And in order to have a great book, you need to have a great writer. And writers pretty much in the comic book medium play an essential role. Now, there are four roles in the creation of a comic book. And the first role is the editor, who pretty much sets the tone and the direction for the comic book. And then you have the artist, who pretty much creates the pictures. And then you have the inker, who sets the mood and the tone for those pictures. However, the man at the bottom of this totem pole of creative people is the writer. Now, your writer pretty much, this is the man or the woman who lays the foundation for everyone to build upon. This is the person who pours the concrete, which lays the foundation. They then set up the structures for the story. And the structures for the story are set up in the model for the paradigm, which establishes the main character, which is the hero, what they want to do, and most importantly, why we should care. And if your writer is writing the story in a professional way, you're going to be able to see that laid out for you in the story. You're going to see this hero established in the first 3 pages of what they want to do, what obstacles they're going to face, and why we should care in less than 3 pages. That's what the good writer is going to do. They're going to lay out their story very quickly, and that's going to compel you to keep reading the comic book. And when you're at the comic shop, give you the incentive to go out and buy that comic. And then by the end of that comic, have you anticipating to go pick up the next issue. That's what a good writer is going to do. And a lot of people, they don't value the writer, but the writer is integral to the comic. If the writer does not write a compelling story and does not get you excited about reading what you're reading, then you have no incentive to go out and buy it. A lot of people think that a comic is just the artist, but a comic is just not the artist. And a comic book is a team of individuals. Again, it starts with the editor who lays the vision and the foundation for things, and then you have the artist who draws the pictures, but and the inker who sets the mood and the tone, but then you have that writer. And if without that writer, you don't have the structure for the story. And all four of these men and women have to work together in tandem towards making a comic book come together. But the writer's role is one of the most integral to it because without them to lay that foundation and that structure, there is nothing for the artist to create the form around, and then there is nothing there for the inker to finish, and there's nothing for the editor to have the vision for, because your writer pretty much, they are integral to the story because they are setting up the characters, they're setting up the plot points, they're setting up the storylines, and one of the most important roles they have is crafting the dialogue, because dialogue does two things in a story. One, dialogue establishes a character and a character's voice, and two, dialogue moves the story forward. And when you read really good dialogue, it really flows and it helps the story move along and it has you turning pages. When you have really good solid dialogue, it pretty much will have you going from page 1 to page 28 in about 5 or 10 minutes. And that's what good dialogue really does. And when you have good dialogue and good captions working in tandem with great art and great inking, what's going to happen is that comic book panel is going to come to life. And as the reader imagines the action going on and they read from panel to panel, it's going to be like an animated movie going on in their heads. They're going to literally imagine these characters moving and coming to life. But all of this can't be done without all the creative people working together. And a lot of people in the comic book industry really undervalue the role of the writer. The writer is, again, an integral part of a comic book. Without that writer, you do not have anyone to pretty much lay the foundation for the comic. They are the person who pretty much interprets the editor's vision, and then they give the artist the pictures in their mind so that they can translate into the pictures that we all see on the comic books and in the comic book panels. And without that writer, the inker has nothing to work with for setting the tone. Everybody has to read the script before they go out and start creating anything. Without that script, no one has that blueprint. Nobody has that foundation to work with. And many people in the comic book industry really need to start understanding the value of the writer and how important the writer is, because without that writer to pretty much lay that structure, there's nobody there to, again, wrap the form around. And without that structure, the reader has no real incentive to buy into the comic. When you have a good writer telling great stories, what's going to happen is everybody is going to have a reason to go out and buy the comic, because comics are about selling stories. And without that writer to tell the great stories, nobody has anything to show the action going on. And we really need to start valuing comic book writers, because if it wasn't for great writers like Chris Claremont, Frank Miller, Jeff Johns, back when he was writing The Flash very well, and Stan Lee, there would be nothing for great artists like Jack Kirby and John Byrne and George Perez and many others to work with. And I think about many of the underrated comic writers like Mark Gruenwald and David Michelin, who pretty much redefined characters and took them to the next level, and they really don't get the appreciation and respect that they should get, because if it wasn't for those great writers, many of those characters like Iron Man, the X-Men, and many others would not have become fan favorites. If it wasn't for those writers creating and crafting those great stories, those characters pretty much would have not actualized their potential and taken themselves to the next level. And it's all because a lot of people don't see the writer, but they don't understand that the writer's role is integral to a comic, because without that writer to create those words, that artist has nothing to create the pictures from. And this is something I've learned working with Bill Walko in designing many of the ISIS series covers, about how important the writer and the artist have to work together. Because back when I was drawing my own covers, I had ideas about things, but when I worked with Bill, he took my ideas and he made them even better. I mean, I could come up with an idea for a cover like a Bride of Dracula, and it was a nice idea, but when I look at the cover Bill designed, based on the words I gave him, he took that cover and made it into an amazing piece of art. Same thing when I look at Bill Walko's design for the Samurai Goddess cover. Now, that was just some stuff I was trying to put together the best I could, because I'm a writer, I know words, but Bill knew pictures, and he did an amazing job on both of those covers. I mean, he took my simple ideas and he turned them into something amazing, something that literally looks like it could be an animated cell. I look at the Samurai Goddess and Bride of Dracula covers, and I also look at the Cyber Goddess cover, and they look like animated cells come to life. And that's part of what makes a really great cover. A great cover just comes out and grabs you, and a great comic panel comes out and grabs you, and it comes to life. But it can't come to life unless people value all the members of the team, because if it wasn't for those great writers, there wouldn't be anything for the artists to work with. And in order to make that great comic, you need to value that writer. And a lot of people in the comic book industry need to understand and appreciate the role of a great writer, because writers provide an essential service in the creative team. It is an undervalued role. It's one many people take for granted. But without them, we would not have the stories that create those amazing runs that we have grown to appreciate, such as the great roles of the Claremont Byrne X-Men, the Michelin Layton Iron Man, the Mark Waid Greg LaRocque Flash, the Mark Waid run on Flash, the John Byrne Fantastic Four, John Byrne Superman. We wouldn't have had that, or the David Michelin Avengers and the David Michelin Bob Layton Iron Man. We wouldn't have had those great comics without those great writers, and you really have to appreciate those writers and the work that they put in. I also forgot to mention the Stan Lee and Jack Kirby Fantastic Four and Mark Gruenwald's Captain America, but all those great writers, they create and redefine those characters, and people have to really learn how to appreciate those writers and their role in the comic process. I'm hoping that more people will start to learn to appreciate the role of the writer, because the writer is the one who helps bring some definition to the editor's vision. They lay out that foundation for everyone to work with, and without them working in the background, there'd be nothing for anyone else to put together in the foreground. That's all I have to say for this video. You can pick up ISIS series books on Amazon.com by clicking the link in the description box.